Welcome to the first episode of Breaking the Norm. The podcast aims to provide stories, guidance and knowledge from those breaking the norm in their profession or industry. We have an exciting lineup already secured, including professional athletes, ex-special forces, businessmen, artists and more. Head over to breakingthenorm.blog for a full preview of our first guests. Today we have Richard Shaky Shaw joining us. He's head coach at Tulare Combat, an extremely successful martial arts gym in the Valleys. We cover a lot of areas, including the benefits of leaving your comfort zone, success, so how Shaky defines success and how it can be achieved. And we also cover current topics such as social inequality. We went on quite a few tangents along the way, so hopefully you'll find it of interest. I really enjoyed recording it, and hopefully you'll find it of benefit to you. Don't forget to like, follow and subscribe to all our social media on Facebook, Instagram and YouTube. The name will be Breaking the Norm Podcast on all platforms. So here it is, episode 1 of Breaking the Norm. I hope you enjoy. Right, so today it's our first podcast, Breaking the Norm. We've got head coach Tulare Combat, which is home to Wales' first UFC fighter, and many other accomplished martial artists, Richard Shaw. Thanks for coming on, Shaky.
No probs, pleasure to be here, Jack.
So we'll start off. You've managed to build the gym from nothing in an area that has one of the highest poverty and unemployment rates in the UK. For those that don't know, the Valleys economically isn't that great. It's a very picturesque area, but haven't got as many prospects, would you say, Shaky, as other places?
Yeah, definitely. I think statistically, I think we're in the top 2 boroughs for poverty in the UK. So it puts it in perspective. Unemployment rates, I think, is one of the highest in the UK. So there's not a lot of employment prospects and no investment into the area for youngsters or adults.
So with that in mind, how have you ended up at this point? So how did young Shaky come to be the head coach to Tulare?
Right. I mean, martial arts I always dabbled with when I was younger. I was a kid. I'd done a bit of judo. But then I went and played football for 10 years. During that time, I used to do a little bit of karate and a little bit of judo with some doormen that I used to work with on the pub scene back in the 90s. So it'd be just a group of us with some mats up in the function room and we train 2-3 times a day. I put that down to probably toughen me up a little bit.
Yeah, old school training.
Old school training, getting thrown onto a concrete floor by a gentleman called Rhys Long, who passed away this year, sadly, at 50. Who was a real character, but a really, really good judoka as well. So we used to train up there. That's where I met my long-term training partner, Darryl James, as well. Darryl used to get involved in them sessions. I moved on to jiu-jitsu. I was a late starter. I was about 29, I think it was. And I bumped into a fella called Steve Jane when I was training down the leisure centre. And he asked me for a spar. And me, after doing several years of training, thought, yeah, we'll do a spar. And within 3 minutes, I'd been submitted probably, and this is not exaggerating, 6-7 times. I gasped. I'd never felt a sense it felt so helpless. And that was my introduction into jiu-jitsu. So I went to a traditional club, was my first training scene, under a gentleman called Heathgate. And I turned up at this session, and it was a sparring session. It was my first class I went to, and it was full of kids. So I thought, I'll be fine here. Shouldn't have no problems. And then these 14 and 15-year-old lads, one after the other, submitted me time and time and time again. And they had a good ground game. It was Taijutsu Kai, which is under Rossi and Akaro, but he had a lot of influence off Carly Gracie at the time, so there was a lot of grappling, a lot of nogi involved in there. One of the young fellas there at the time was about 14 and must have submitted me 7-8 times with Joe Duffy, who's in the UFC now.
Joe Duffy, yeah.
But I was shocked. You can come from those sort of situations and it's make or break. You can either think, well, my ego will not put up with me going back to that sort of environment, or you think, well, let's throw everything in the bin that I've learned and we start afresh. And that's what I've done.
You see it a lot, don't you, in gyms? You have the big guy come in. Get smashed.
I mean, we've had every hard nut in the valley turn up at our place, and a handful have stayed. It's an ego thing. And I mean, I had the bug. Ended up training pretty much 5 nights a week, traveling around the country, going to seminars, and then that was probably 17, 18 years ago. So here I am now.
And now got Tulare Combat's home to many successful lads. You got Jack Shaw, Chris Edwards, Jack Marshman, quite a lot coming up.
Yeah, we've got a really strong MMA team. I think it was 2008 I went my own way. I finished 2007. I won the World Championships in traditional jiu-jitsu. I'd fought MMA and different bits and bobs, but just felt there was a time to go on my own. 12 of us started training in a cellar under a nightclub, which is now knocked down, unfortunately, in that area. Another business which has gone through in the area. And it's gone from there. It's just grown, you know. The reputation went. I tried to drive around and get in as much knowledge as a coach as I could. And we went from a little cellar, which was 8 meters by 4 meters, to a small unit. We was there for about 2 years, and now we're in the current facility in Blaenau. And you know, we've just gone from strength to strength. We've gone from 12 to over 100 students. We've got affiliate clubs in Blanavon and also in Abergavenny. You know, we've got good links with the guys down in Bournemouth, so it's a real strong...
Going from strength to strength, really.
Yeah, it's a real strong network at the moment.
So, in your opinion, obviously this podcast's about successful people, breaking the norm. What is it that makes a successful person? And how do you instill that in the team as well?
I think instilling it into the team is a case of leading by example. I've always said that. I mean, lots of the people that have had a lot of influences on me personally, in my work life, in my martial arts, they've always tended to be the guys that have been hands-on. I mean, you see it not just in martial arts, you see it in life. People who can talk the talk but don't actually practice what they preach. You know, you look at a lot of the traditional arts where you see some 60-year-old instructor who's overweight, they're not living the right lifestyle. You know, how can you look up to that type of person? One thing I do, I'm 47 this year, and I still train every night. So particularly the knock-on effect with the MMA team in particular is that they can never have no argument. If I can do it every night of the week, you know, I do everything that they do. I'm slowing up a little bit now, don't get me wrong, but they can never ever... And the fact of the matter is, I've got experience. I've had over 400 competitive bouts in jiu-jitsu, sport jiu-jitsu, nogi grappling, and MMA. So
pretty
impressive. They can never throw back at me and say, oh, well, what do you know about it? Because my reply is I know everything about it, you know.
Exactly.
And I've learned from my mistakes, so you guys don't have to. But I think, hands-on, motivational, treating them as individuals. You can't treat everybody the same. You've got to find out the personality, what makes that personality tick, and encourage. You know, as adults, let alone children, we respond well to good praise. You know, so that's my take on things.
I think that's the same in any industry, isn't it?
It is same as in work. You know, everybody likes a bit of praise. If the boss comes along and says, "Oh, you've done a really good job today," you have a bit of a spring in your step. You know, and that's
better results.
That's the reality. Of course it does. Of course it does.
When someone walks in the gym, can you see if they've got it, whatever it is? Can you tell?
Usually after a couple of sessions, I'd say, there's a lot of lads that, you know, we got a young lad there now at the moment, Kenzie, who's 16, and Ellis, both of them have walked in, and when they first came in, they were very, very raw, but within a couple of weeks, I thought, you know, these kids have got something special about them, and I believe if they keep working to the potential they are, that those lads have got a really successful career in front of them in MMA and jiu-jitsu. They're both very, very good grapplers. But I mean, some of the more physical lads, but they have, as you call it, but there's two types of it. Yeah, they've got the physical attributes that can come in, and all of a sudden, within 12 months, 2 years, they submit to the majority of the team, and the athleticism is a key part. But at the same time, the mindset is key. And a lot of these guys that have the physical attributes tend to drift off. You know, they get involved with a woman, and that takes their priority. They change job, that takes priority. They have children, that changes their priority. Some of them don't lead the right lifestyle. They're out drinking or they're out on the drugs. Again, that's not a priority if you're serious about this sport. So there's been a few who's come through the door and are just natural athletes. And I think, I mean, the one lad who sticks in my mind, if I'm honest, is Ashley Beaumont, who unfortunately due to personal circumstances isn't training anymore. But when he came through the door, he was a real awkward mess. But within a couple of weeks, he started picking things up, and within 2 years was a monster. And I really believe if he was still competing now, he'd be in the UFC and a prominent figure in the UFC as well.
That's a shame. I think. Do you think that martial arts and I think sport in general can instill a mental toughness?
It does. It gives a discipline. I was having this discussion yesterday about society. You know, there's not a lot of discipline anywhere now. You know, you look right through the schools, the way that kids now will talk to staff members, will talk to members of the public. You know, there's no fear of consequence no more. Look, I've witnessed it firsthand how youngsters of 13, 14 years of age have a total disregard for the police. I mean, when I was a kid, I was terrified of the police because they clip you around the ears as they put you in the van. That's the difference. There was a lot more police presence. I just think there's a lot of issue with the parenting, you know, and I'll throw it out there. That's my belief on it. There's issues with parenting, and there is no discipline. They've grown up to 16, 17 years of age, being allowed to do all they want when they want. They're not familiar with the word no. They've never really had to work hard for things. Whereas in martial arts, you come in and you with all, particularly at our gym, we've got all walks of life. We've got police officers to people that have served 3-4 years in prison, to firemen, to bankers.
Yeah.
We've got an accountant working up there, school teachers. We've got all walks of life. And I think when you start training in that environment, it opens your mind to how life can be led outside of your own realms.
And pushing the boundaries.
It is pushing the boundaries, of course it is. And having good role models to look up to. Looking at some of the lads that have come to me from the youth offending service and now doing really well as a professional, like thinking, right, that could be me. Yeah. Or it may be the case of not in martial arts, they just enjoy the training. They look at somebody who's a school teacher and think, well, if he can do it, I've spoken with him, he's a normal guy, become a school teacher even.
Because you're a teacher too, aren't you?
I'm not a teacher, no. I'm a behaviour. I work in a school full time.
Okay.
For want of a better term, behaviour manager. So I deal with the vulnerable children within the school environment. So my job is to deal with behaviour, break down barriers to learning, build up rapport with parents, and I use a fair bit of martial arts. In the role there, we do a fair bit of training.
Good breakthrough.
Marshman and Jack Shaw come down regularly and do sessions for the kids, so it works well.
Brilliant.
Yeah, it works well.
Because I was thinking not just martial arts, but any sport. I think it will instill like some sort of resilience to use in all areas of your life. Like I know a lot of prominent people, like actors, like Will Smith, says he just goes out running, and if you can get to the point where you need to stop and you're going to break, and you just carry on running, you build that mindset to use in any other aspect of your life.
Yeah. Totally agree. I mean, I wasn't a confrontational person when I was a young bloke. I was quite a nervous guy, to be honest. I used to get stressed out over a lot of things, and if I walk away from problems, not that I look for problems anymore, but what martial arts has done for me is given me the confidence to deal with people, it's given me the confidence to challenge people if I think they're in the wrong, stick up for yourself, and just be confident in all walks of life, if I'm honest. If it weren't for martial arts, I probably wouldn't be doing the job I'm doing.
Yep.
Would I have met my wife? Probably not. All these things, it all ties in. But yeah, I was nervous, and it's given me a self-confidence, and it's also given me an outlook on life which I probably wouldn't have had. I'm a lot more peaceful within myself. I'm a lot more chilled. Things don't irritate me like they might have done 10 years ago.
But people just don't seem to want to push us up. I know you like the quote, isn't it? Comfort zones are where dreams go to die.
Comfort zones are where dreams go to die. And
everyone likes staying in their comfort zone, don't they? I think
there's probably 80% of the population happy in their comfort zone. They've never took that step outside of the realm of comfort and thought, let's challenge myself and do something. That's not got to be martial arts. That can be anything.
Anything. Just to try and get outside your comfort zone, build some resilience.
For some of the kids I work with in school, a challenge for them is even just saying good morning to a member of staff first thing, because socially they're really, really struggling. So we've all got our comfort zones. We've all got different areas in our life which we need to work on. But I really believe that if everybody was involved in martial arts, you'd see a much healthier society.
I think you would, yeah. Or at least sport in general.
Yeah, definitely.
I was on the way down here listening to the radio, and I honestly couldn't believe they were basically people saying, because we're not winning all these medals at the Winter Olympics, we just shouldn't go anymore.
Yeah.
And this bloke called up and he said, I forgot the name of the woman, but she's I forgot her name, but she's a speed skater, and she's 3-time world champion, yeah? But in the last 2 Olympics, or 3 Olympics, she's crashed out. And he calls up the national radio, saying, if the best we can do is have a skater that crashes out 3 times in a row, then why are we even going? I was thinking, she's won the world championships 3 times, and you're sat on your sofa calling up a national radio station to say that she doesn't deserve to go to the
armchair fans.
Yeah, and it astounds me that I don't think anybody that had actually left their comfort zone and realised what it takes to achieve in any.
What I would like to see on some of these call shows is for the person hosting the show to throw back and say, well, do you want to give me an aspect of your life where you feel that you're in a position where you can actually discuss this and have an opinion on it?
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody's entitled to opinion, but I don't think opinion should be negative all the time. You see it on football, they should sack this manager, or this striker should be sold and he doesn't play. What have you done in your life to award you the ability to have that opinion? I have a lot of fun on Facebook. Anybody that follows me on Twitter, Facebook, I troll like man. I'm not even a big football fan, but I just love how people react to it. Be critical if it affects you personally, or if you've got a knowledge in the area and you really feel that you can give something back into it. But Nah, a lot of these people are full of opinions, and as I said, they've never stepped out of a comfort zone and tried something themselves or put themselves under the spotlight.
You see it a lot in all sports. Like, I understand being a fan, so you can be a fan and have an opinion. But if you're there, sat on your sofa, telling Anthony Joshua how to box, and you've never stepped foot inside a gym, let alone box professionally.
I'd love to see Anthony Joshua turn up on their doorstep
exactly,
and say, right, should we pop outside now and you run me through a few rounds of where I was going wrong.
Exactly, yeah. But you see it everywhere, and it confuses me quite a lot. Right, so we've touched on the fact that you're leading by example. You're a lot older than the guys in the gym. What is your routine and how do you stay so active? So what's a day in the life of Richard?
Right, a day for me, well, I get up around about 6:15 in the morning. I drive then an hour to Cardiff where I'm based in the school, so I work 8 till 3:30 every day at a school in Cardiff. Hour drive back, literally in, change, and then up to the gym. So a Monday is our grappling day where we do some Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu followed by some no-gi grappling. Tuesday is our striking class, and again, it's not necessarily a traditional boxing, kickboxing or Muay Thai. We mix everything up, and with the onus being on an MMA fight, not necessarily a pure stand-up match, so we adjust things such as a stance and things like that. Wednesday is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Thursday wrestling, and Friday we have an open mat. And Saturday, Sunday, we don't have a structured class, but the guys tend to go up there when and as they want to, or we do some runs. So,
do you ever see your wife? Or?
I think that's why she stuck me so long. We've been together now 26 years, and I think if it was home a bit more, it wouldn't be that long. If I'm honest, so.
Do you take any supplements or anything?
I don't, mate. Funny story for you. People should always check with the doctor before they take supplements. I was taking whey protein. I remember, what am I, 46? So about 41.
Yeah.
Getting older. Somebody said, try some whey protein, it'll help with your recovery. Next, I've come down with a chest infection, flu, and this went on for 12 months. I was referred to a specialist because I think when they monitored me for 52 weeks, I had a chest infection for 37. And after 12 months of tests and different things, it was concerning me. I lost a lot of weight. I was ill. And I had a severe allergy to whey protein.
Oh, God.
And what I was doing, taking the whey protein in the evenings after training.
Yeah.
And then how the specialist explained it, the fluid is still within you and you have an allergic reaction. So as I'm lying down, it was infecting my lungs. So I've come off the whey protein and it's resolved. So no, I just try and eat well. I take vitamins, vitamin C, cod liver oil, or omega-3 fish oils. I've started taking the CBD tablets.
Yeah, there's big things about that.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's a placebo effect, but I feel I've trained since Christmas without any knee braces on, which I haven't done for 10 years.
It's meant to be really good for inflammation.
Yeah, so I've taken it for the anti-inflammatory more than anything, because at my age, the joints do ache. I've had a few breaks and pulls over the years, so. But no supplements. Don't get me wrong, the lads will tell you I love a bar of chocolate. I'm not a big drinker. I can take or leave alcohol. I can't take or leave chocolate. I've got to have chocolate every day. But yeah, in general, particularly a Monday to Friday, I'll eat well when I've got a structured day. I'll go off the wall a little bit Saturday and Sunday, but then back on it on a Monday.
What has been your biggest setback on the way to where you are now? Have you had one? Or and
not necessarily a setback. I think probably the most frustrating part of where we were going was getting that first fight into the UFC. Yeah. Like Marshman was the first one to get in, which was in 2016. I felt he should have got signed probably 12 to 18 months before that.
Yeah, because he was BAMMA champion,
yeah,
Cage
BAMMA
Warriors
champion, and he'd fought a who's who, and it was
his
guys.
record's huge, isn't it? Like, you see some guys getting in the UFC, they're like 8 fights. Marshman's got loads,
and people forget how young he is. I mean, he's 28, I think Jack is 29 max, but he's been fighting since he was 16 years of age, so particularly on the amateur circuit. But it was the frustration of getting that first fighter through, and I believe now with Jack, Brett, and John Phillips getting through the door, I think it'll open. Particularly, Brett's having a lot of success as well. Marshman's 2-2. I think Phillips is fighting now March 17th. I've had a look at his fight. I think it's a good fight for John. I think John will win that. I can't talk too much about Jack's opponent because it's not being released until tomorrow. So there's been a change of opponent for Jack. Brett's fighting in April, again fighting a pro, but I think Brett is leading away with he's been unbeaten in UFC on top of being an undefeated fighter. So
his work ethic's huge, isn't it?
I think that was the biggest frustration. Getting somebody in, I'd like to think within 12 months we'd have another 2 guys from my gym getting through the door.
Jack Shaw's definitely not.
Yeah, but again, people put a lot of pressure on him, Jack. There was a huge furore. 10,000 people signed a Facebook petition back in in November, but he's 22 years of age, you know.
Still young.
He's still young. He's got he's 7 now. He's people think he's been around a long time because he's been fighting, another one who's been fighting since he's 16 on the amateur circuit.
Yeah.
But he's only been pro 2 years. He's fighting Vaughan Lee on March the 24th, which is a massive step up for him. I think it's, by far the toughest. Vaughan's had 8 UFC bouts, which is more fights than Jack has had as a professional. Yeah. So it's a massive fight, and I think this will really be a prominent fight where people will know after this whether he's ready or whether he's not. If he loses, we go back to the drawing board and we work on the weaknesses. We work out why he lost and how we can improve. And if he wins, it shows that we're doing things the right way and we're on the right track. I've got a real belief in the system we got up at the gym. I think for a small valley community, as you said, from an area with, I think it's 27,000 population in the whole of the borough. That's not just the town. The town's a couple of thousand. To get a fighter into the UFC and to have as many fighters fighting on television, on Cage Warriors events, we fought all over the world. It's incredible for us, with no financial backing off the county, no benefits of the council, of the local government, because we're not a recognised sport.
That's crazy, that is, the amount of lads you're taking in to train.
I do massive amount of works with the youth offending services. There's a lot of guys have never paid for a class up with me because they're in a financial position. Lots of kids that don't pay. Yeah, we get no reward back because we're still not a mainstream sport in the UK yet. We've got a lot of work to do. I'd love to see an Ultimate Fighter type event on one of the terrestrial channels on your BBC or ITV. And I think that would be a big step into getting MMA into the mainstream.
Well, I think there's a bit of a misconception, really, because you say boxing and everyone's like, oh yeah, we know boxing. Or you say judo or jiu-jitsu, and they're all fine with that. You put it together and all they hear is cage fighting.
Cage fighting, yeah.
But it's mixed martial arts, isn't it?
It's moving in the right direction. I mean, Cage Warriors for me have done a huge amount of work. I know I'm biased because we're part of the Cage Warriors program, but it's really professionalised the sport. I mean, I'll give you an example. I've gone to events when I was a fighter where you'd fight somebody 10 kilograms in weight difference.
It's a big difference.
St. John's ambulance were there on medical duty. Yeah. Substandard medicals, you didn't know who you was fighting. How nobody's been, got killed is nothing short of a miracle. Whereas if you want to compete as a professional on a Cage Warriors event, you need to get your MRI scan, your MRA scan, you need to have an eye test, you need to have your bloods, you need to have an annual medical. And it isn't the cheapest. I mean, we can get the whole package done in Wales for around about 600 quid. That's everything done. But if you're looking to be a prominent part of the sport and be serious about being a professional, you have to have it done. Now, that's not a yearly cost. This is where is a misconception. The MRI and the MRA are the most expensive. They cost around about anything between 350 and 600 quid, depending where you are in the country. We're fortunate we got a good deal with a private hospital in Newport. We can get it done for around about 360 quid. But the MRA is forever unless you pick up a concussion, which you need to have a new scan. The MRI lasts for 3 years. So it's not a matter, you pro rata that. It's 100 quid a year to make sure that you're not going to drop dead in the middle of an MMA fight. You've not got a cloud on your brain. Yet people still would prefer to get paid that little bit more, not invest into the safety of the sport and go and fight on a two-bob show and put their life for it. It's all going to come to a head, Jack. My belief, we've seen it in Ireland. Somebody unfortunately passed away.
Yeah, Conor McGregor's teammate, wasn't it?
But my fear is it's going to happen on a real substandard show, and it's going to have a dramatic impact on the rest of the UK. It'll set everything back years. That's my fear.
On that note, brain trauma in martial arts, is it a big issue?
No, it's probably less of an issue than what it is in rugby union or rugby league.
I think it's just more widespread in the papers.
Yeah, really, of course. I mean, as I said, we have the annual checks, and I've got lads that have been fighting with me 10 years, and nothing has ever come up on any of their MRIs or MRAs, So if there is a problem, they don't fight. It's as simple as that. Yeah. But I don't think it is. I mean, we've changed, and again, this comes from experience and me being a fighter many years ago. I mean, I can remember being in the gym 10 years ago, getting pretty much knocked out, and then the following day back in the gym and sparring again. Yeah. Whereas now, if anybody takes a nasty knock, they don't spar for 4 weeks, and that's without any medical advice. That's on my advice as head coach. But no, I don't think there is. I mean, back in my day, we'd spar hard 5 days a week. Now we have, particularly if it's a fight camp, we have a really tough MMA session on the Monday. Yep. A lot of shark tanking. It's quite a physical, hard session. Tuesday is a striking class where it's a lot of pads, a lot of technique, but then we do usually 6 to 7 rounds of 3 minutes, or maybe 5 fives we sometimes do, and if there's an MMA fight coming up. We're head guard, 16-ounce gloves, and there is a bit of contact, but, you know, count on one hand how many people have been knocked out in my gym in 12 years. Wednesday's grappling, Thursday grappling, and Friday is a controlled environment. So you're only taking shots to the head once a week, you know.
Yeah, I think that's the main thing, because
it's training clever, isn't it? It's trying to be sensible about it,
exactly.
and knowing what's working.
Most of the shots you're going to take in the build-up to the
Yeah.
fight, aren't they? The training, day in, day out. I think if you train smart, you'll probably be okay. But with regards to children in martial arts, are you happy with children doing full contact?
No, I'm not. I don't even push any of my kids to do a jiu-jitsu tournament, because I think it should be an environment where they come, learn, build confidence. I have seen so many times where a parent or a coach has pushed a youngster into competition, even just jiu-jitsu, just grappling, way too soon. They've lost 2 or 3 fights. They've come off the mat crying. They're frustrated. They're embarrassed. Their confidence is, where you've built it all the way up, has dropped to 0 again, and they don't come back through the door. The amount of fighters that was a big learning curve for me as a coach, I'll be honest with you, Jack. When we first started the gym back in 2008, 2009, I was one of these guys that was, gotta compete. I would push guys as soon as they come through. Once they've been training 70, right, come on, let's get an amateur fight, let's get an amateur push. And on hindsight, I've probably lost quite a few fighters who, if I managed them as I would today, would still be at the gym. But they've picked up a loss because I've pushed them into competition a little bit too early. You know, and all my hands up to that. There's a big learning curve for me. And confidence-wise. But going back to the children, I don't think you should put, you know, I got some kids that love competing, and we encourage them and support them all the way. But I never, ever put it to the kids. I wait for the kids to come and speak to me. As for full contact MMA, I mean, I mentioned Kenzie and Ellis earlier. They're both real talented lads, 16. They've just left school. But they've not taken a headshot MMA fight yet. It's all been no headshots, because it's about building up. Their brains are not formed properly even yet at 16, 17. There's still issues there. I've allowed them to do a white collar boxing, but that's with head guard, 16-ounce gloves, and 3 2-minute rounds, with me in the corner. So at any time, if I think they're taking a little bit too much damage, I can throw the towel in. But again, that's those guys have come to me and have said they want to do it, and I'll support them 100% if they want to do it. But as for kids, I'm not a great lover of amateur boxing for the very, very young ones. I think 13, 14, they're of an age where they know if they want to do it or not. But, you know, come on, do you really want to stick some poor 8, 9-year-old kid in front of 300 spectators on the middle of a jiu-jitsu mat and have some lad who's a real... Because it's hard to determine at kids what levels are. And somebody does a CNAG throw, rolls him into an armband, submits him in literally 30 seconds. That can have an astronomical effect on their confidence. So I don't encourage them. As long as I can see progress in the gym and that they're training regular, I encourage them and they get their grades. But I don't push them for the
Focus
competition.
on building the mindset for a later date.
I do push the adults for competition, but not necessarily MMA. You know, we've got a big jiu-jitsu team, and they're all aware. I don't expect them all to be world champions, but if they want to progress to the next belt, there has to be some competition experience in between.
Leaving your comfort zone as well, isn't it?
Of course it is. I mean, you can be. I've seen some of the guys that are brilliant in the gym. You can't do anything with them. You know, brilliant. And then you put them on a competition mat and they can't win a medal because their nerves and dealing with the adrenaline and dealing with the unpredictability of an opponent which you've never seen draw. For example, me and Daryl have trained together 20 odd years. Yeah. And we'll have a competitive role, and it is competitive, but it can be quite boring to watch because we both know each other's game inside out. Yeah. And we're both, you know, but when you go into a competition, you've no knowledge of this guy. You don't know, YouTube and Facebook now you can find the odd video, but there's still plenty of lads that don't put their videos up, and it's a totally alien opponent. So that makes you deal with the situation in the moment, you know, and then you see who's and cut out for it.
Highlights your weaknesses as well, I suppose.
Of course it is. I've had a lot of lads that have never medalled, but I've had as much joy watching them compete as they've maybe gone into a competition, had 3 wins, 2 losses, and just to think, well, that lad would never in a million years ago, 5 years ago, even contemplate going on a mat and having a competitive jiu-jitsu bout. And that gives me as much joy as Marshman winning the first fight in the UFC, or Jack Shaw winning a televised fight. I take as much from that as I do any of the pro team.
I think that's an important thing to note in any industry, though. If you put yourself in the high pressure situation and leave your comfort zone, you'll see your weaknesses, you'll develop more. And I think It's crucial.
I worked in a factory years ago, and there was a takeover, and this has stuck with me. And this must have been 15 years ago. And a new chairman came in, and you know, it's like you've got a chairman of a multi-million-pound company. Yeah. You see them once every 6 months, and that's about it. This fella comes round and speaks to all the staff. There's probably about 150 lads on the factory floor, and then spends the next 2 weeks working half a day on every department. So then he had a full understanding of how things worked. I think that transcends into martial arts as well. You know, how you see lots of coaches that have never competed, and some brilliant coaches out there. I'm not knocking them, and you know, I'm not saying there's a right or wrong way, but my take is this: if a student throws back in my face and says, "What do you know about it?" As I said earlier in the podcast, I can say I know everything about it. If I've never competed, how do I explain to some 19-year-old kid about nerves? How do I explain that it's okay to lose? How do I explain that if you've done this right? I've never been in that pressure environment myself, so I think it's key that if you are a coach, it's important that not even at a high level, but you have tested yourself in competition.
I think that once again that transfers to business as well. You see it online. Everyone, these coaches, life coaches or business coaches, you say, well, have you actually tried and failed yourself? Have you done? You're all good advising people on how to spend their money or how to run their business, but have you done it yourself?
When I worked for Barclays for quite a few years, and the guys that used to work in the training team, so as you said, the coaches who would explain to you how to sell a home insurance on the phone to some 80-year-old woman, they tend to be the guys that failed on the sales floor, and they found a role for them, you know. So I used to find that quite comical. But yeah, I think you've got to, as you said, in any job, you probably have a lot more respect for a businessman who's self-made, who's been there from the bottom and worked their way to the top, than somebody who's been fortunate to have a wealthy parents who's put them through university in Oxford and all the rest of it, and got them all the right qualifications and put them straight into a high-ranking, high-paid role. You know, just my take on things.
How do you define success?
Success. Oh, I love that word. Success. Success is in many forms. Success to me is going to be totally different to what's success to you. Success to George St. Pierre was probably winning a 2-weight world title in the UFC at the highest level. Where probably success for one of my students who's 48 years of age was getting a blue belt and competing in the Cheltenham Open against another 50-year-old, you know, and that is probably meant as much to him as somebody winning a world title in the UFC. So success is internal, I believe, and it's personal. You know, for me, have you been successful? Yeah, I've been successful. Could I be more successful? Yeah, I could. Do I want to be? Yeah. And not from a selfish point of view from me. Like I said to all the guys, it's not me that's getting in UFC and I'm the big contract, but I get as much joy from seeing these guys getting in. But success in all walks of life, success is getting up in the morning and having a smile on your face. Yeah, success is coming home to a wife that loves you and, you know, looks after your kids. You know, success is staying off drugs after you've had a drug problem for 10 years. Success is not having another glass of alcohol because you behave like an idiot when you've had a drink on it, you know. So success is many forms. So if you're talking on a sporting line, who are the most successful? Again, people will always say the people at the top of the sport are the most successful, but I'd beg to differ that there's a lot of success on the grassroots level as well.
Definitely. I think people tend to build up this impression of success, which isn't really true to themselves, because you get like most of the top CEOs in the country. I think there's a ridiculous statistic, like almost 50% have depression. They are depressed, and it's like, to most people, like starting a job, they look at the CEO and think that's the top. I want to get there. Look at the posh car he's got, or look at the holidays he's having. But that guy is depressed. He doesn't like his job. Is
he happy? No. It's a really good point. I mean, is he successful in the eyes of the public, but internally there's no success in there? I mean, I think success comes with contentment. I think if you're happy with your car, you're happy with your life, you're happy with your house, you're happy with your wife. And as you said, it's keeping up with the Joneses. You know, you buy a BMW 3 Series, and then the guy from the company over the road buys the 4 Series. You've got to go out and buy the 5 Series, and it can become competitive and over the top. I think if you're happy, that's success in itself, isn't it? All the money in the world, as you said, doesn't make people happy. You know, look at some of the real superstars in the sport. A David Beckham type character, got all the luxuries and all. But what would he give just to be able to probably pop into Tesco's and have a shop around the aisles, or pop to the local cafe and have a cup of coffee and read the newspaper. You know, these are things that me and you take for granted that these people will never ever be able to do again the rest of their lives. Never be able to go for a family holiday without security and without it being, you know, top secret. So yeah, it's lovely to have all the money, I suppose, and all the fame and fortune, but it does have its downside. And as you said, I think depression is a key one. You know, when you look at footballers and so, look how many footballers that earn a fortune as well. You know, you look at, they've earned £5-6 million in their 10-year career, and then they hit 35, 40 and they've not got a penny because they've lived that life, you know. So I think that's a key thing as well for the fighters coming up from you. You know, I've broached it with Jack and the lads is try and invest. You know, one thing about coming from an area like this is properties and that which you can pick up cheap. So you can invest your money if you earn decent money for a long-term future.
I think that's the best plan for all sportsmen, really.
Yeah, of course it is.
Any professional career is going to be relatively short-lived. You're not going to be doing that.
No,
till you're 65,
I mean, I think I read once of Robbie Fowler, you know, the Liverpool and England strike. I think he owns like 400 properties in Liverpool. You know, so he's never going to want for anything again, exactly, is he? Yeah. Whether that's true, I don't know. There's definitely an article I read, so could be some truth in it.
We're talking about success and goals. What are your goals now then?
My goals now, just keep. I'm happy with the club at the moment, so it's maintain the club. Just keep raising the standard of the jiu-jitsu there. Keep learning myself. Goal for me now is to not sit on the fence and be content. Is to keep improving. You know, even at 47, like I've just been out to Bournemouth for a weekend. I picked up some nice stuff from down there, which I'll bring back into the team. But for me, another fight in the UFC would be a big one. A couple more fighters fighting televised bouts on Cage Warriors, and a couple of gold medals at the British Opens for the jiu-jitsu team. So we're maintaining our standards and improving year on year.
It's a totally different note now. Locally, we started off by saying how the Valleys are in a bit of a poor situation. What do you think is the best plan to get it out of it?
I don't think they will, Jack. I've said this on other interviews. You know, don't want the old sob story, but we are the forgotten nation up this neck of the woods. I mean, you go to Cardiff or Newport and the investment is phenomenal. You know, Swansea even, you know, the big cities are ploughing the money in, but there's nothing, and I can't for the life of me. Look, you walk around this area, and as you said at the beginning, Paul, it's a real picturesque, beautiful area with lots of woodland. Why has nobody invested into like a holiday site up here or a camping site? Or, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's such a trade in the Yorkshire Dales and that for walkers and people that go camping and staying out. We've got hundreds of square miles of forestry which they should invest in. Job-wise, I think I've read an article where like for every job advertising Blaine and Gwent, there's like 200 plus people are applying for it. You know, the statistics are incredible. Any jobs in this area, you know, will respect the majority of minimum wage. You know, can you pay a mortgage and bring up 2 kids and look after your kids and your home on minimum wage? You can't, mate. It's difficult, you know. There's lots of empty property. I mean, it's never recovered. I'm going to strip it back now. When I was a kid in the 80s, you know, I could take you down just to the bottom of my street there. There's a road. There was probably 20, 30 shops. There's 2.
That was back when the mines were open.
When the mines were open. And then the miners' strike happened, and I can remember this because my stepfather at the time had a small corner shop and a video shop. And within 12 months, that was closed down and had gone bankrupt. So people think that the miners' strike only affected the miners. It didn't. It affected everything in the community. So none of the local shops are open anymore. There's no investment for business. You know, there's a shop called S&M Ashes and Sons, been open 118 years. It's closed down this year. You know, things that you've always taken for granted it's been as far back as I can remember. It's been in the area for over 100 years, and it's closing down due to nobody has got any money to spend in the area. And it's, you know, when people talk about depression, I'd love to see the statistics of a depression in Abertillery and Blaine and Gwent, mate. It must be phenomenal. You know, if you want to work as like myself, I've got to drive an hour a day into Cardiff to find a job that pays decent. It's such an amount of people applying for just the most menial jobs. It's tough up here at the moment, you know. And the kids, you know, people talk about investment for youngsters. There's nothing around, you know. There's no decent youth clubs. You've got your local football teams. That's a Saturday afternoon and training twice a week. But there's nothing during the week where they can invest money into. I mean, recently They done work on there's an area at the top of town called the Foundry Bridge. They invested £750,000 of EU money into widening the bridge and putting 6 statues up. Now £750,000. That should have gone into one of the old buildings or the old leisure centre, turned into a youth hall and employed somebody for the next 10 years.
That's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous, mate. And who do they talk to? Who do they have discussion with? I mean, there's been a real revolt recently. I mean, it's always been a Labour ward, and at the local council elections, pretty much every independent has got in. So I'd like to think there'd be a change, but there's only so much you can influence, isn't it? Unless a government decide that they're going to rock in now and invest money into the area and create businesses, it's never going to happen.
Well, for those that are listening, I'll put up a photo after the local area on the blog, so you can have a look. It is very picturesque. I just don't understand, like you say, why there isn't more investment.
Doesn't make sense.
It doesn't at all.
You know, we've got direct link roads as well, which bring you to the area from Hereford and Gloucester way if you're coming down from England, from Birmingham, coming up the valley from Cardiff and Newport. So it's easily accessible. There's a direct train link, but there's just nothing, mate. And you know, I feel like a broken record. Whenever anybody interviews me, I go on about it, and I get a bit of stick saying that I'm always moaning, but you know, it doesn't affect me. I'm comfortable. I've got a good job. I've got a successful business. You know, but I've had no help to get to that point. You know, that's all come from me digging deep and working hard myself.
It makes me wonder even more why you've got, like you said, you've got 100 people at your gym. So in a relatively small population, that's quite a lot of people.
Yeah.
Well, why isn't there more funding? I just don't.
No, I agree.
It's just ridiculous.
Mate, society is in a terrible state, I believe. I think priorities are all wrong. When we had this really bad attack at House of Commons, was it?
Yeah.
I mean, there was outrage, you know, and rightly so. And I sent an email. I think it was Paul Rimmer put an idea up that he was going to contact the local police station. Paul Rimmer's a highly regarded MMA and BJJ coach in Liverpool, saying he was going to offer his services free of charge to local police. And I thought, you know, that's a really, really good idea. So I contacted Gwent Police, contacted Cardiff Police, no response. Contacted again, no response. Contacted a third time, they've come back, and I've said, look, nobody's got back to me. I'm offering the service to you, because the self-defense setup in the police system at the moment is it's incredibly
terrible.
dated. It's awful. You know, somebody's going to get killed.
So
I've offered to turn up at the stations and do a seminar, or even, you know, travel up and come to my gym. And we're 12 months down the line, and there's been no response whatsoever. Now, for me, particularly in today's day and age, that should have been a priority.
Yes, especially when they're going on about...
And for free, but they're on about costs. I'm not asking for any money.
Yeah,
you know, I'm offering that free of charge. And I've got a good background in self-defense, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I come from a traditional background. I've done a lot of reality-based martial arts. And I really believe, between, you know, the jiu-jitsu and the Brazilian jiu-jitsu, I could have really brought something to the table for them. But, you know...
It's not like it's a budget issue, is it, if you're doing it for free? So
no, not at all.
Not at all. But I see jiu-jitsu now is getting a lot of influence in the forces, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, Marines, they got the Reorg Foundation.
I've just done a session for the Marines in Bournemouth on Saturday, down in Jimmy Johnson's place at Phoenix MMA. Yeah, really enjoyed it. Some physical lads there.
Yeah, I can imagine,
but a lot of them got good jiu-jitsu backgrounds. There's a few blue belts there. There was a big lad, apology, I can't remember his name. He was a purple belt under Jason Tan, who's ex-UFC. So there's a real drive within the armed forces, I think, to use things. You know, in America, they're streets ahead of us. All the police use Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. So,
and I think a lot of the times we're quite lucky over here. We don't really have many cases of police brutality, but I think a lot of it, like I've seen people get tased for no reason. The guy's just sat there, but it's because the police officer is scared.
Yeah, and again, going back to confidence, when you said to me earlier about what did martial arts do for me, it gave me a confidence. If I saw a confrontation, and I'll use this example. If I saw some husband beating his wife up 15 years ago, would I have crossed the road and probably gone involved? Probably, I'll be honest with you, probably not. And that's a fault on my part, because I should have. If it happened today, I'd have no hesitation going over and putting the dude to sleep and holding him until the police come without any sort of harm coming to him. Yep. You know, whereas I just think if everybody had the knowledge of jiu-jitsu, the place will be a lot safer, you know, particularly with the police. And as you said, you imagine, and people, I see these videos where, you know, police get criticised for being overzealous with force. You put yourself in their position where maybe 2 coppers and a street full of 30 or 40 youngsters, you know, it's an intimidating.
Oh, definitely.
And sometimes that truncheon will come out. Whereas I believe that if they had that confidence to manage themselves differently, you know, martial arts, I do a lot when we do self-defense around mindset, you know, about talking to people, eye contact, speaking to people in a certain way. And I believe that a lot of these situations could be diffused through chatting. you know, rather than it becoming complicated. But again, I never knock these videos because you don't know the full story. And,
No,
you
definitely.
know,
It'd be intimidating. You've got a group.
would I want to be in the middle of London with 20, 30 kids? You don't know if anybody's got a knife. And,
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
You know, it's a tough one to call. So I'm never critical of it, but I do believe, you know, I'm right to be critical in as much as probably those individuals that are on these videos would have had a different approach if they had a good background in training in martial arts. Yeah.
It is definitely fear. I think you strike out because
it's adrenaline, and again, this is why I'm a key thing for competition. When you know you'll never get a black belt off me unless you've done competition. For the reality, if we strip it back and take it back to its roots, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is a martial art.
Yeah,
it's not a competition. It's not a sport. It's a martial art.
Well, as Joe Rogan put it on one of his videos, we're basically playing a game at training of I killed you, now you kill me.
Yeah, what does the tap say? It says, well, you've killed me. You know, stopping you from killing me. But it's a martial art, and it should be to protect yourself. Yet it's become so sport orientated, and as I said, lots of clubs don't encourage their students to compete. But what happens then when you're out one Saturday night and that confrontation happens? Some guy that's 6 foot and 16.5 stone and is corked out of his brain decides you're going to be his victim for the evening, and you've never had to deal with nerves, you've never had to deal with adrenaline, you've never had to deal with that instantaneous of the shit's hit the fan. I've got to react. And I've seen it over the years, mate, not just with jiu-jitsu guys, but with lads from traditional backgrounds where they've got all the training and all the ability in the world, but in a real life confrontation, the adrenaline's got them, the bottle is gone, you know, and they're not. Do I really want to put my name to an individual and give them a black belt if I didn't think they could handle themselves in a self-defense scenario? No, not at all. So I think it's key. I think it's key that and nothing wrong with the sports side of it. I encourage it. I love it. You know, I'm one of the biggest competitors, even my age now. But I also believe that we are watering down the sport by not keeping the reality and the real side of it.
I think that happens a lot. Like we were saying how beneficial martial arts is, but at the same time, I think if you've got a diluted sport where you're giving a 12-year-old a black belt, I think you're giving them a false confidence.
Of course you are.
So they're going to get in situations where maybe it would have been best for them not to hang around, like they should have gone. Yeah. But now they've got this false confidence that they can handle themselves, and they get a slap off a lad that's never trained.
Yeah.
And it all goes to pot.
Me and Mark Goddard have had this conversation a few times about reality. You know, Mark came from a traditional background like myself, and his lads I know and his lads that he said the same, which have never done a day's training in their life, that I could take into any gym in this country and they would wreak havoc if it was a real situation.
I was saying this back home, like some of my mates like worked the doors for years.
You know, some guys who are just naturally aggressive, born fighters that have no fear, have no limit, and you know, the reality of the situation is you would have to put them people to sleep if you're going to stop this fight happening. So, you know, there are some aggressive people out there that unfortunately, and hopefully people will go their whole life without having to deal with a confrontation, and I wish them well in that. But, you know, life is life, and I work in a school, so I see what is coming up through the system. I see how the police deal with things. I see how communities are falling apart, and there's no consequence for poor behaviour anymore, you know, particularly on the streets, you know, where people are not getting prison sentences because the prisons are full, and people become a little bit complacent in their mindset and think, well, I've beaten this kid up, I've had 3 months suspended sentence. Well, I tell you what, I'll take a knife out next time. I can stab somebody, and, you know.
I'm from a little city, Hereford, and nothing ever happens. In the last year, I think we've had, there's definitely 2 in the last year, murders via stabbings, and the other one recently was in broad daylight, midday, in the centre of Hightown. So you've got kids, you've got grandparents, and they start to think they're almost gangsters, and it's like you're living in a little city, you're not a gangster. You'll find out what a gangster is when you end up in prison.
But again, this all stems from, how did that person become that person? Because they've had no role models then, is it? Possibly. Has it been bad parenting? Possibly. Or has it been overly good parenting where they've spoilt them to death and they've never had to work for anything and everything's been given to them on a plate? Again, has it been society, one after the other, where they've started off with little trivial things and nothing has happened, then it's become quite a serious thing, and again, nothing has happened? You know, I've seen some nasty, you know, when I've worked at pubs and clubs over the years, I've seen some real nasty assaults which have never got to court. And these people then, they've assaulted somebody in a really bad way, put them in hospital, and then the persona changes, and this, I can't be touched attitude, and then they do damage to somebody else, and it's a knock-on effect. So I just think society and, you know, what was it, somebody just just murdered somebody. I think he'd done like 12 years for murdering somebody.
It's
Like,
crazy. Imagine being the family member of the victim.
Oh,
you walk down the street and see him. But we're going a bit off topic now.
Yeah.
But it does make me wonder. You rob a bank, you're going to prison for a very, very long time. Or you commit fraud, you're going down for a long time.
Yeah.
If you kill someone or seriously assault someone, or even a lot of these child abuse cases, they're out in a couple of years.
Yes, well, I mean, there's a lad I know got done for money laundering and selling drugs, and no drugs were found. So based on the money laundering, ended up having a 17-year sentence. Yeah,
you've got people that
yet
have
he has said
children.
there's paedophiles in and out at the drop of a hat, having 8 to 10 months. The system needs a total overhaul, particularly the legal system when it comes to sentencing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been quite prominent in, I don't know if we should mention it, but the poor James Bulger case, where some guy has been given a non-plea for the rest of his life and has come out now and caused 2 further crimes with paedophilia. What is going on with this country? If that happened in America, the kid would never have left bars. Behind bars, he'd be there for life. I'm all for reform. And I'm all for rehabilitation. There's nobody is a bigger exponent than me with some of the lads, because I've had some criticism for some of the guys I've taken on over the last 10 years, But with the right people around, you can reform. But come on, if somebody's going to be continually reoffending, sooner or later you've got to say enough's enough, and it's got to be dealt with.
Do you think the class system still exists? Because we're talking about cases now. There's a case recently. I know a girl, Oxford student, I think she was either studying law or medicine, something like that, stabbed her boyfriend.
Yeah.
And she wasn't given a custodial sentence because I think the quote from the judge was something along the lines, it would harm her career too much.
Yeah.
No, you would never get that with a person on benefits, for example.
If you want to talk about a class system, and again, I'm going to be controversial with this, but I have a real belief in it. Would we have invested as much money into Madeleine McCann if her parents had been unemployed? Maybe one of them was a drug addict and they lived in Abbotsbury in a council estate and were both claiming benefits.
That's exactly what I said.
Would that happen? 100% it would not happen. Right? You would not even... It probably made page 7 in the news.
I don't know. I reckon they'd have actually been dragged through the papers for their bad parenting.
Yeah, 100%.
They'd
have been social services. I mean, come on. Two educated adults have left 3 kids in a room in a foreign country, several hundred yards from where they're eating. I'm sorry, but I mean, how they have not faced criminal charges is a miracle. And I'm all for it. If you can invest as much money, and if in 10 years we find that poor girl, great. It'd be nobody more pleased than me. But again, there's no balance. If that had happened to a council estate couple who were maybe drink or drug dependent, there'd have been no reaction. Now, I'm sorry. Again, you bang on, Jack. There is a huge, huge dividing class in this country. And dependent on your class and where you live and maybe who you know in some extremes will depend on how you were treated. I mean, again, going back to Blaine and Gwent, right? We've got the highest unemployment, one of the highest poverty levels in the UK, yet we've got higher council tax rates than I think it's 60% of London.
That's crazy.
You fathom out.
Yeah. It makes the divide even bigger, doesn't it?
I'm paying more council tax on this house than colleagues that I work with in a prime, Cardiff Bay area in Cardiff. So
that is crazy.
Yeah.
So do you think the lads here are more of a disadvantage when they're starting off?
Well, with regard to anything in life?
Life in general.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. They don't have access to the types of things that you do in a big city. I mean, I've worked with kids, particularly when I'm working in Cardiff in a school at the moment, but I was in the Rhondda Valley. And I was working with one young lad who was 16 who had never been outside of his town at 16. He'd never been on a bus. He'd never been on a train. Because, again, afraid to step out of his comfort zone, had no social skills. Nobody was working with him socially. So, yeah, I think we are off on a wrong foot. I think what we do produce is fighters. And the reason we do that is because a lot of these youngsters now see it as a method of earning money, because even at professional level outside of the USC now, there are good companies such as Cage Warriors, BAMA, ACB, all paying decent money. I mean, we had an offer this week for Jack to fight in Bulgaria, they contracted, which we can't because we're contracted with Cage Warriors, but they offered him 5,000 to turn up and 5,000 win bonus. Now £10,000 for a fight is a lot of money outside of the highest level. So I think the fighters see that, they see somebody like Marshman, who's come from the background, similar to these guys in trouble with the police, and turn his life around and sign a good financially rewarding contract with the UFC, that it makes them think, right, well, if he can do it, coming from our small little area, our small little gym, anybody can do it. So I think it's set the light under a few of them and give them real aspirations then.
That's good, because you see a lot. The story is repeated a lot in history. It's like the fighter that's fought his way out. You see Conor McGregor. He's on benefits. He's now probably one of the most famous people in the world.
100%.
So it is a way out. But what would your advice be to guys? What do they need? What's it going to take to get out?
It's going to take this, right? As I said earlier, you can have all the physical attributes in the world. If you're not prepared to mentally be disciplined, it's all for nothing. So the enjoyable part is turning up to the gym every night. That's enjoyable. You go training, you spar hard, you have a bit of fun, the banter is rolling, you work hard, you're sore, you're aching, but it's been a real enjoyable experience. The not so enjoyable experience is not being able to go out with your friends for 8 weeks before a fight because they're all out on the beer and going nightclubbing. You're a 22-year-old lad and you have to come home and stay in the house. It means you can't have a can of Coke. You've got to drink water constantly. You've got to manage your food. You've got to be so disciplined that you can't have a bar of chocolate. You've got to be eating turkey breast, turkey mince, some of the most bland foods you can imagine. You've got to be monitoring your weight week on week. You've got to be willing to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning so you can go on that 10-kilometer run to do the fat burn. Then when you're really aching because you're into Thursday and it's all of a sudden your body's starting to shut down a little bit because you've done 3 sessions a day, you're still going to motivate yourself to go. Yeah. So mentally, this how strong a person is mentally sets them apart. I've had a lot of guys that are probably physically not as talented as some of the other lads in the gym, but because they've got that mental focus and that mental ability to push and sacrifice and be disciplined, they're the ones that will see the rewards, a few years down the line.
There's a good mini documentary, isn't there, on Jack? Is it Dan Kemmy's?
Dan Kemmy, yeah. Jack Shaw's on Fire, yeah.
Jack Shaw's on Fire.
It's on, if people do want to watch it, I mean, it's on the Lad Bible. They released it 2 weeks ago, and I think it had 1.5 million views. So there's been a lot of good feedback.
It shows exactly what we're on about, doesn't it? Like
it shows, And people say about, all these fighters have got to come from a really tough background. Jack's had quite a fortunate background, he's never wanted for money. He's been brought up well. Me and his mother have always provided for him. So he's quite educated, he's been to school, he's got his GCSEs, his BTECs, and he's also got his degree. So he's got options, but again, what sets Jack apart, and I don't like talking about Jack too much because they all think it's biased being father and son, but it's not. He works harder than anybody else in the gym, and he's got that mindset and discipline. Definitely. Like people say, he seems to be a league above everybody else. Yeah, because mentally he's preparing himself totally different to everybody else, and he puts the work in. It does help that I live with him, so we're monitoring everything together. But I've never got to question him. I've never got to chase him up to do anything. If on Friday he's only allowed to eat turkey mince, rice and Greek yogurt. That's what he does, So the mental capacity is much more important than the physical capacity. I always say that somebody with a strong mindset will do much better than somebody with the physical assets, but can't be motivated and can't be disciplined.
I think it's the process that everyone forgets in the background, because you get a lot of people seeing success, whether it be sport, business, anything. And they think, I could do that, or they say, I could do that, but well, why haven't you then?
Exactly.
It's because you haven't put in the work behind the scenes. Like, you're not grafting every day, and when you fail, you're not carrying on. Like, I don't know, there's probably not one successful business person who's self-made that hasn't failed along the way.
Cool, spot on, and it's all a learning curve about making mistakes and picking yourself up when you hit them walls. When we started out, the first 3 years of the gym being in progress again, where we are now. For the first 3 years, I was out of the house 3 weekends in 4, and that took its toll. But I'm fortunate that my wife could see that I had this the vision and the mindset that I was aiming for something. And what I was trying to do was get our name recognised. I wanted everybody to know that if a fighter from Tulare Combat arrived, they were in for a tough night. Win or lose, they were in for a tough night. They would be on weight. They would be fit. They'd be easily fit enough to do 3 5-minute rounds, no problem whatsoever. I wanted them to know that we were professional, the approach, we would turn up, and everything that they asked of us would be put on. And then 3 years down the line, it was like a massive turnaround. We'd gone from doing all the local shows all over the country, from Scotland to England to Wales to Northern Ireland, to all of a sudden, BAMMA are picking up the phone to you. Cage Warriors are picking up the phone to you because your reputation has started preceding you. So it's about the working hard, you know. That was a tough 3 years, Jack. I'm telling you now, it put a strain on my family life. It put a strain. There was times at the gym thinking, is it worth it? Is it worth it? But then as your reputation grows, obviously then the customers start coming and people saying, I've seen that Jack Marshman on BAMMA on television. I wouldn't mind training with him. And because you know, another thing being a Valley community is that everybody knows everybody. So, you know, if somebody local does well, you can guarantee probably 90% of the community will hear about it. And the knock on of that is it inspires youngsters to come and join them. And we've got a nice ethos. There's, like last night, we've done a striking session, and there's guys that have been training there 2 weeks, right up to guys that's in the UFC and Cage Warriors. So everybody is welcomed, and we're all inclusive. You know, we're not a them and us. If anybody comes to train, a little cliques. I've made sure that was the one thing that we learned in the past. You can't afford to have cliques within the gym. So I think the success has come from hard work, grafting, putting our name out there, and now we're reaping the rewards, really. I can take, you know, I'm not out there half as much as what I used to be because we don't need to be.
What is your parting advice to any listeners?
If you really believe that you want to do something, and as long as it's realistic, give it a go. And give it 100%. And I say this to people, to the kids in school and to the fighters in the gym. If you look back, and there's nothing wrong with losing, there's nothing wrong with failing, as long as you can sit down and look yourself in the mirror and think, could I have done any more? If the answer to the question is no, I couldn't have done any more, there's success. When we talk about success, whether you've won, lost or drawn, there is success. Whether you have got the job or the university place when you've left school after you've worked with me, as long as you've given it 100% and you can't have given any more, that is success. But don't ever look back and think, what if? Because as a fighter, that was one thing I learned. I lost a tournament once. We fought in a jiu-jitsu tournament, and we were in 2 pools of 4. So it was a division of 4. The top 2 then went through, and we fought in the semi-finals and the final. And a guy that I beat in the group division, submitted, beat me in the final because I was exhausted. And that was a real key for me, was, right, I'll never, ever not be fit enough to win a tournament again. So give it 100%. If it fails, it fails. And you know, I failed at things. I tried to open up a gym in Cardiff. Give it 100%. 12 months down the line, I had to close it down. Did it work? No. Do I have any regrets? No. Could I have done it? Could I have done any more? No.
Yeah, but you're not going to be thinking, I wish I opened that gym, because you've done it and
I've done it.
And
I've done it, and I found out that it didn't work. And it also, you know, on hindsight of that, it impacted on the gym in Blaenau. So now I've got no intention to open any more gyms, apart from, you know, if anybody affiliates, one of my students moves on and opens a gym elsewhere, they can affiliate. But my main focus now is the gym in Blaenau.
So before we go, Shaky, is there anything you'd like to do or give a shout out to? Anybody?
Right. First of all, thanks to all the guys at the gym, all the students, all the coaches that have worked hard to make a success, all the regular sponsors, your Jack Evans, your Tatami Fightwear. Anybody wants to find us, we're on Facebook and on Twitter, with Tulare Combat on Facebook, and it's Richard Shaw MMA on Twitter. All class details can be found on there. We're a real inclusive group, so whether you're looking for a bit of fitness, a bit of self-defense, or if you're looking to do this as a sport, feel free to hook us up, come and have a look at the gym. And if there's anybody out there, any multi-millionaire sponsors who would like to invest in the club so I can give up my job and go full-time as a coach, please get in touch.
Well, you should say your guys are getting a lot of coverage.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of coverage now, and sooner or later, and it's always the same. Once you start getting a bit of success, everybody wants a piece of the pie. But unfortunately, now we move. But if there is a multi-million-pound sponsor out there who would like to pay me a wage to do this full time and help us grow the club, you can contact me on Richard Shaw, SHORE @yahoo.com. All right.
Brilliant. Hopefully, we'll find you one. Right. Cheers, Shaky.
Cheers, Jack.
So that was the first podcast. I hope you all enjoyed it. The next podcast will be with Lindsay Bruce, ex-SAS turned competitive bodybuilder and now peak performance coach and owner of Elite Performance in Hereford. We'll be getting a bit of background story on Lindsay, so how he's come to where he is, his opinions on success and what it takes to achieve success, and some general stories along the way. So make sure you've liked all our pages, followed us on Instagram, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.